Israeli settlers storm Al-Aqsa Mosque in Al-Quds. Zionist occupiers protected by the Israeli regime's forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound and occupied Al-Quds on Sunday. Wafa news agency correspondent said scores of Zionist settlers entered the compound through the Moroccan gate in groups. They performed rituals and Talmudic prayers there under the protection of Zionist police officers. Since 2003, the Zionist occupation authorities have been allowing settlers into the compound almost on a daily basis, with the exclusion of Friday, the Muslim day of rest and worship. Zionists captured Al-Quds where Al-Aqsa Mosque is located during the Six-Day War in 1967 in a move never recognized by the international community. From NRoyanNews.tv, Zionist occupation settlers storm Al-Aqsa. Sunday, a number of Zionist occupation settlers protected by the Israeli occupation forces stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied Jerusalem, as reported by the Palestinian news agency Wafa. They entered through the Moroccan gate in groups and performed Talmudic rituals in the vicinity of Al-Aqsa. Since 2003, the Israeli occupation has been allowing occupiers into the area nearly every day except for Friday. And from Yemen News Agency, herds of Zionist settlers desecrate courtyards of Al-Aqsa. Dozens of herds of Zionist occupiers renewed on Monday morning their desecration of the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque amid the tight protection of the Zionist enemy forces. The Palestine online website quoted the people of Al-Quds as saying that the settlers stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque from Mughrabe Ghatem, carried out provocative tours of its courtyards, and performed Talmudic rituals on their way to the gate, to the chain gate. And from EnglishPalInfo.com, dozens of Jewish settlers stormed the Aqsa Mosque and occupied Al-Quds on Monday morning and later in the afternoon. Palestinian media sources affirmed that the settlers entered the mosque through Maghariba Gate and toured its courtyards under police protection. And during the tours of the Islamic holy site, the occupiers received lectures from rabbis about the alleged Temple Mount, and a number of them performed Talmudic prayers in the eastern area of the mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is exposed to daily desecration by Zionist occupiers and occupying forces in the morning and the afternoon, except on Fridays and Saturdays. During the presence of settlers inside the mosque, entry restrictions are imposed on Muslim worshippers at the entrances and gates of the mosque. Muslims urged to intensify their presence at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians and Al-Quds figures and activists have called on Muslim worshippers to intensify their presence at the Aqsa Mosque to protect it against desecration and Judaization by Zionist occupiers. They call for necessarily frequenting the Aqsa Mosque to frustrate the Zionist plans and the growing occupier desecration of its courtyards, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. Recently, Sheikh Ikrimah Sabri, head of the Higher Islamic Council in occupied Al-Quds, warned that the settlers' break-ins and their Talmudic prayers at the Aqsa Mosque are attempts to portray it as a Jewish holy site. Saudi Arabia denies entry to Israeli foreign minister delegation for a UN event. Oh, just a moment on that, actually. Watch this space. We will be right back. From the Cradle, the Israeli Tourism Ministry released a statement criticizing the UN's failure to uphold principles of equal treatment. Saudi Arabia denies entry to Israeli foreign minister delegation for UN event. Saudi Arabia has refused Israel's request to grant entry to Foreign Minister Eli Cohen to attend a UN tourism event to be hosted by the kingdom, according to Israel's Walla News. The kingdom also denied visas to an Israeli delegation from the Galilee village of Kfar Kama in northern occupied Palestine, who set to attend the summit that started on 12 March. The occupied village was among 32 sites the UN chose as top rural tourism destinations for their cultural and natural assets, U.S. media outlet Bloomberg reported. Villagers from the ethnically Circassian town of Kfar Kama and Israeli officials were invited to the event in the ancient Saudi village of Al-Ula by the UN World Tourism Organization. Still, according to sources informed on the matter, the Israelis were never given visas. In the spirit of assuring equal rights to all members of the organization, UNWTO, as a UN specialized agency, is seeking the kind support of the Ministry of Tourism of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and facilitating the visa issuance for the Israeli delegation, UNWTO Secretary General wrote in a letter obtained by Bloomberg to Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Tourism. The Saudi ministry and the UNWTO have yet to respond to requests for comment. In an emailed statement, Israel's tourism ministry expressed frustration over the denied visas. Israel calls on the UNWTO and UN organizations to uphold the guiding principles of the UN, including equal treatment and ensuring the possibility of countries participating in the organization's meetings. In this case, the UNWTO did not meet these standards, and we regret this, the Israeli statement read. Tel Aviv has made no comment about Riyadh's refusal to allow Cohen into the country. Last year, the kingdom relaxed its entry rules for Israeli passport holders as part of U.S.-sponsored push for normalization. Reports suggest dozens of Israeli business people representing Tel Aviv traveled to Saudi Arabia over the past year. Hebrew media also revealed last year that several senior security and political figures from Israel have visited the kingdom over the past decade. In July 2022, an Israeli journalist visiting Saudi Arabia for a regional conference sparked widespread criticism and condemnation after he snuck into the holy city of Mecca with non-Muslims, where non-Muslims are strictly prohibited from entering. The journalist was seen taking selfies and was featured in an Israeli Channel 13 report pointing out sites and landmarks. Not long after, the kingdom detained the Saudi national who had helped him sneak in. Israeli tourists have also been spotted in the planned futuristic megacity of Neom in Saudi Arabia, which is still under construction. The UN tourism event comes just a few days after Chinese-sponsored resumption of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran was announced. The restoration of ties has been seen as a massive blow to Israeli ambitions for an anti-Iran alliance between Riyadh, Tel Aviv, and Washington, and a blow to Israel's diplomatic agenda, as Bloomberg called it. In January of this year, the kingdom vowed that it would not normalize ties with Israel until a two-state solution is agreed upon, which has been seen by many as an unrealistic and attainable goal. And from Axios, Saudis effectively block Israeli minister's trip to kingdom for UN conference. Saudi Arabia initially approved a request for the Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen to enter the country this week for the UN World Tourism Organization conference, but wouldn't seriously discuss the diplomat's security details, effectively blocking his trip, 3 Israeli officials said. In the past, Israeli ministers used UN conferences and international sports competitions as a way to visit Arab countries that Israel didn't have diplomatic relations with, mainly the United Arab Emirates. These visits played a central role in gradually creating a de facto normalization process between Israel and the UAE that made the signing of the Abraham Accords in 2020 possible. A country that hosts international UN meeting commits to allowing all member states to attend regardless of whether that nation has diplomatic relations with the others. The UN World Tourism Organization invited representatives from an Arab village in Israel and representatives of the Israeli Tourism Ministry for the conference in AIULA. But the Israeli foreign minister had, I guess that's Al-Ula, but the Israeli foreign minister had a more ambitious goal for the conference to send Cohen as the head of the delegation, which would have been seen as a modest but unprecedented normalization step, the 3 Israeli officials told Axios. No Israeli minister has ever publicly visited the kingdom. The Israelis approached the World Tourism Organization and the Biden administration to help them get the green light for Cohen to attend, the Israeli officials said. White House and State Department officials urged the Saudis to agree, per the Israeli officials. The White House declined to comment. According to the official, Saudi Arabia told the World Tourism Organization that Cohen could attend the conference with 2 staffers, but when it came time to finalize Cohen's security arrangements, a typical step for any traveling Israeli minister, it became clear that the Saudis weren't going to have a serious discussion. The Israeli officials said that they forced Cohen to take the trip off of his agenda. The delegation initially invited also didn't travel to the kingdom. And the delegation invited didn't travel to that kingdom because they didn't get a response for the Saudis in time on their visa requests. Israeli public broadcaster Khan reported this. What they're saying, the Israeli officials said they believe the timing of the conference 2 weeks before the holy month of Ramadan was problematic for the Saudis. Eventually, the Saudis found a way to say yes to the UN as they had to, but at the same time create conditions that wouldn't allow the visit to happen, a senior Israeli official told Axios. The Saudi embassy in Washington did not respond to separate requests for comment. The UN World Tourism Organization also didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Since the signing of the Abraham Accords, Israel has focused its diplomatic efforts on pushing for normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia. In public, Saudi officials have made clear they won't normalize relations with Israel without progress in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Still, there's been progress, including a historic deal around 2 strategic Red Sea islands that officials saw as paving the way for Saudi Arabia to take steps toward normalization. Israeli officials noted that Saudi Arabia is hosting several UN conferences later this year. They stressed the hope that after Ramadan it'll be easier for the Saudis to allow the participation of an Israeli minister in one of these conferences. And remember, your engagement through a like, share, subscribe will accelerate us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Lokai is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Oh, look at me.
I thought you scientists were supposed to keep an open mind.
There's a difference between keeping an open mind and believing something because you want it to be true.
Your friend Spock is a logical man.
I find your arguments strewn with gaping defects in logic.
Most illogical reaction.
The whole notion of
Demonstrated
logic.
our superior weapons, they should have fled. You mean they should have respected us? Of course. Mr. Spock, respect is a rational process. Did it ever occur to you they might react emotionally? With anger?
Doctor, I'm not responsible for their unpredictability.
You do not think like the others. There are no colors to your patterns of logic. There's only black and white.
Logical, unemotional, completely pragmatic. And we poor, irrational humans whip them in a fair fight. Now you'll find yourself back among us.
The whole notion of
humans
logic.
again.
Which I find eminently satisfactory, Doctor. For nowhere am I so desperately needed.
Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic.
The whole
We
notion
have
of
tried to
logic.
understand how we feel about our life here, about each other.
Emotions are alien to me. I'm a scientist.
You're gonna leave here without them? Run off on some wild goose chase halfway across the galaxy just because you found a discrepancy in a hydrogen cloud?
Doctor, I am chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl.
Mr. Spock, you have a remarkably logical and analytical
The whole
mind.
notion of
Thank you.
logic.
I prefer the concrete.